Welcome to What Does This Mean? A year-long stewardship educational venture by First Lutheran Church in Topeka. I'm John Hanna, your host for today's video. We're taking our cues from Martin Luther himself, who built both his small and large catechisms on that question, what does this mean? And today we'll discuss the gift of God's creation. Joining me today are Noni Strand and Gary and Jeani Anderson. And first, I'll ask my guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. And we'll start with you, Noni.
Well, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be a part of this. My name is Noni Strand, and I serve as the chair of the Central State Synod Lutherans Restoring Creation Mission Table. I am passionate about all things that have to do with Earth community and passionate about working with wonderful people like Jeani and Gary Anderson. I live in Salina, Kansas with my husband, Verge, and I also serve as the chaplaincy manager at Salina Regional Health Center.
So you've been pretty busy this last year.
It has been very busy.
Okay, Gary and Jeani, tell us about yourselves. We know you both as First Lutheran members, of course, but also people who have been working to protect the environment.
Well, thank you, John. I grew up on a farm in southeast Kansas, about 3 miles from where Jeani's farm was. I studied biological sciences in college, and I joined the Sierra Club in 2007. Sierra Club is the oldest environmental organization in the U.S., founded in 1892 by John Muir. In 2015, we became involved and connected with Lutherans Restoring Creation that Noni mentioned. I also became involved with Kansas Interfaith Action, who, along with other justice issues, works in Kansas for climate justice.
And Jeani?
Okay, and I'm Jeani, Gary's wife, and I grew up in the country. I grew up on a farm in southeast Kansas, and it was kind of a Swedish community. And that's where we valued good, clean, healthy food and conserving water, which is mostly rainwater cut off the roofs of the houses, and eating ripe, plump strawberries right out of the patch, because we didn't spray them with any pesticides or insecticides. So it was just great. We could feel free that we weren't contaminating ourselves. We didn't even know about it. So that was one of my experiences. And then I enjoyed seeing numerous butterflies. I mean numerous. And we just don't see that today. Butterflies and wildflowers in the ditches and in the prairies. It was something that I miss, because we just don't have those things anymore. Although I have heard that some people are putting seed out and making that roadways prettier again. So that's fine. And then we recycled everything. We didn't know we were recycling. We just did it. I mean, didn't think about it. And one of my favorite memories is Mom stopping at the feed store and buying chicken feed. And at those times, the sacks that held the feed was in cotton prints. And we would run through that store looking for just the right color and the right print for Mom to make pajamas and shirts and shorts and things, dresses and things of that nature. Something we don't see today. I learned the importance of good breeding practices and soil conservation, terracing and crop rotations, and being good stewards of the land. And neighbors help neighbors. I love that. When we had a problem or needed haying, or I think it was mainly haying when we needed help, and they came and helped, and that was wonderful because we just didn't have that. it was just a very sweet community. And then I grew up to marry my childhood sweetheart in a Swedish community there in Vilas. And we raised 3 wonderful children, and we raised them out in the country. And we instilled in them the things that Gary and I learned about God's precious gifts. They're so precious, and we just need to keep them being precious and valuable and important to us. And so I had a rich heritage of caring for our world and each other. And that is because of that, I'm just so excited to be part of Lutherans Restoring Creation.
Okay, thank you. And of course, today our topic is the stewardship of God's creation. And I'll start with a Bible verse from the book of Genesis, verse 31, near the very end of the first chapter. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. So let's consider that as we talk about our stewardship of that very good creation. And Martin Luther's question, what does this mean? And I'll start with you, Gary and Jeani, and maybe as you all answer this question, talk a little bit about Lutherans Restoring Creation and what that is and how it works.
Okay, well, first of all, I try to think about the impact to our creation of the buying and the living choices that I make. I also want the earth and all living things to be good and better for my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And Noni is our leader for Lutherans Restoring Creation, but this was a program that started in the seminary in Chicago quite a few years ago, and we got involved with it, like I said, in 2015, which it had been going for some time prior to that, but it is now available to all ELCA Lutheran churches, and we are a synod that has adopted it synod-wide, so we've had meetings and trainings across Missouri and Kansas.
And Noni, following up on what Gary said, what would you add to that?
I would add that Lutherans Restoring Creation is a wonderful community of people that work together like creation does, as a network, as interconnected, as ways to support each other and learn from Earth itself about how we can care for all that God has given us. The creation stories in the Bible teach us, I think, an important lesson about humility, that God made everything good, not just humans, and that we humans are absolutely dependent on the rest of creation. And that as we live with humility, we also recognize that our actions are interconnected with everyone else, and that what we do affects people across the world, affects other living beings besides humans. And so we need to be very mindful about the things and the choices that we make. I also think the second story in creation says something very important to us about God said to till it and keep it, that God entrusted to us as humans this calling to take care of and to honor with dignity everything that God had made.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about what we can do to be good stewards of God's creation as we seek to walk with Jesus and live a Christian life. Noni?
I think, first of all, to spend time outside, to learn from Earth herself, that she is the greatest teacher. I think it's important that we find communities of other like-minded, passionate people, and that we take action, that this is a pressing need in the world, that it's not going to take care of itself, and it's time for us to act. I think it's also great if you want to contact us and be a part of things in Lutherans Restoring Creation. We would love that. We help congregations to think about different areas of congregational life that can be more restorative and more in keeping with ways to live as caretakers and stewards of God's creation. So we look at buildings and grounds, education, worship, advocacy, and personal discipleship. And we challenge one another to really grow in ways that perhaps we haven't done a whole lot in. But for example, Gary is a wonderful resource on advocacy, so he teaches us all the time. We have a woman in Columbia, Missouri, who is an incredible educator who comes up with wonderful things. So being in community really strengthens us for this work.
Okay, thank you, Noni. Gary and Jeannie, what would you add to that?
Well, I think for me, I'd like to add that all of this means loving. When you read the Bible, or when I read the Bible, love comes out so many times. And I think that I might add understanding and awareness and maybe compassion and kindness to all of that. And not everyone thinks like I do, and that's okay. And I probably wouldn't want them to. And I like to be able to bridge the gaps, because sometimes people aren't where I am. And I don't want them to walk away mad or rebuffed, or that they're wrong. Because we all come with a certain thinking about the way things should be. But if we just love that person through all of that, try to understand where they're coming from, and maybe just have a conversation, sometimes that opens up avenues that people wouldn't go down that road unless you start talking to them. And in the process of talking to them, you can say things like, I see where you're coming from. Can you help me understand why this or that? And it's just like opening a little door. So for better communication and better understanding. And we're not going to get through this unless we open up those doors and welcome people of other thoughts. It's kind of hard sometimes. I've been there, so it's kind of hard. But in time it happens, and that's a good thing.
Well, my answer to this is that I invest my time and resources in supporting organization and causes that work for environmental justice. Kansas Interfaith Action, Sierra Club, both lobby for good climate policy in the Kansas legislature and Kansas Department of Health and Environment. I advocate for environmental education through programs like Lutherans Restoring Creation, as Noni mentioned. I looked out my car window this morning and watched a wind turbine generating clean, renewable energy. My friend used to say, and it certainly was true today, when the wind is blowing, the power is flowing. We've been involved in an amazing transition in energy policy in Kansas, but we still have more work to do.
And I would like to add that I would like Bill Gates or someone with some education and some ability to work on high altitude wind. If you go 25,000 feet up, or 20,000 feet, I think, we have wind that's there continually, but we haven't figured out how to harness that. So do either guys maybe can help us with that, or maybe whoever listens to this video would say, hey, I got an idea. Wouldn't that be great?
Exactly. A little God-inspired creativity.
Yes.
Yes. And well, to wrap things up today, I'd like to ask why it's important to do some of the things that you all have mentioned here, both the little steps that Jeani, for example, mentioned at the top, or Noni, you talked about Lutherans Restoring Creation, or Gary, you talked about advocacy. Why is it important to do those things? And Gary and Jeani, I'll start with you on that question.
Well, we are talking from our Lutheran perspective, and we Lutherans believe we have a responsibility to leave our earth a better place for our children. And this included not only looking at the physical impact of our lifestyles upon nature and our planet, but also taking into account the well-being of people in all our decisions, actions, and practices.
Okay. And Noni, what would you add to that?
Well, I think as Christians, as people of faith, that issues of creation care, climate change, restoring things for our future are at the core of what Jesus calls us to do. It's not an option to opt out. And I think, as Jeani so beautifully said before, that we come from a position of love, and that in the church, it may be the only place where we can talk about these difficult issues, such as climate change, and do it with respect, and to find and forge new ways to move forward. And so I think the church is positioned as the place to be a leader in these conversations and in this action for the future of this earth and the future of humanity.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Noni, and thank you, Gary and Jeani, for being here today. And I want to thank all of our viewers for watching our video. Our stewardship theme for May is our stewardship of our relationships. And the next video in this series is scheduled to premiere May the 9th. May you all continue to grow in your understanding of stewardship as you answer Martin Luther's key question: what does this mean? And until next time, this is John Hanna. Goodbye.